So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these guys here and I'm going to kind of clean them up so they're out of the way. And the way you do that is you right click and you clean up blocks. And now they're all lined up over there along one side. And that's pretty nice when you can clean things up so you can work on them. So I'm going to look here is when I start as a clone. I'm going to add some code to that. So I'm going to move this guy over here out of the way. And again, that's just to keep things nice and neat and tidy. So what do I want to add there? I want to add something that will let me choose between social distancing and moving. Okay? So the easiest way to do it is to say if 50% of the time when a clone is born, if 50% of the time it moves around, and then 50% of the time it can social distance. Or maybe we say 90% of the clones that are born decide to social distance and 10% decide to move around. So what we need to do is create a situation where we try to figure out as a clone is born whether it's going to be one that social distances by staying home and not moving or whether it moves around. So I'm going to grab an if statement. But this one is going to have two possibilities. One is going to be if 50% of the time I'm going to stay at home. Okay, so I'm going to put social distancing here, and the other 50% of the time I am going to move around, so I'm going to put move there. So I'm now going to go down to my blocks, and I'm going to say half of the time I'm going to move, the other part I'm going to socially distance. Okay? Now, I can grab this guy. Now notice I'm already using him down here, so I don't need two of them, so I'm going to get rid of one. And I'm just going to plug this in here. Now the difficult part is how do I build this code to figure out if half of them are going to become stay-at-homes and half are going to go out and run around. Okay, I'm going to do that with an operator that checks to see if something is equal to something else. Okay, so I'm going to start with this. And what I want to see is if I randomly pick a number between 1 and 2 to get 50% of the time, I'm going to look for a 1, or I could look for a 2. But I'm going to pick a random number, okay, between 1 and 2. I'm going to change that 10 to a 2. And I'm going to say if it's equal to 1, which it will be, a random number, if you pick between 1 and 2, half the time it's going to be equal to 1. Okay. So you see how that works? So half the time, if you pick a random number between 1 and 2, if it's equal to 1, half the time it will be, then social distance. If not, that's where the else comes in, then you can move around. So let's try that. See if that works. So I'm going to click on the green flag. Okay, now you see half of them are moving and the other half are not. Once that virus starts moving, though, you can see what happens. Pretty impressive stuff. Okay, let's stop it for a moment and let's look at the different numbers. And these are numbers that you can jot down, and I'll show you an easy way to jot them down. Right click right here on top of the then and add comment. Okay, see where it says add comment? And here I can type in some numbers. So I'm going to put this over here so you can see it. And the first one I'm going to type in is 0% social distancing. And that would be 1 out of 1. In other words, everybody moves. So it would be 1 out of 1. Okay, so I'm gonna stretch this out a little bit so you can read it. So let's try that. 1 out of 1. So I change that to a 1 and I run it. And this is where nobody's going to social distance, because if I pick randomly a 1, if it turns out 1, everybody, or sorry, this one will be everybody social distances. So in this case, nobody's moving except that one bad guy. Okay? So rather than that being 0% social distancing, I'm going to change that to 100% social distancing. So I'm going to click over here. So that's 100% social distancing. Nobody moves. So now my second one is going to be 50% social distancing. And that's going to be what? That's going to be 1 out of 2. Okay? And then if we keep going, we can get 25% social distancing. And what would that be? 25% social distancing would be 1 out of 4. And what you're going to do is just change this number. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. Anyway, you can play around with it. You can do all sorts of interesting things where perhaps after a certain amount of time, if you've been infected, you get well again. So you turn back to green. You could write code to do that. You could make this a very, very sophisticated operation here. So we're going to go ahead and stop now. This has been Bill Stannard from Yes Enja Learning at the St. Louis Science Center with another of our Enja Learning sessions. This one is titled Scratch Lesson Number 4, Social Distancing. And before I say goodbye, don't forget to save your project with a name that will make sense to you. In this case, I've called it Social Distance. You could call it COVID-19. There are a lot of different ways you can name it so it'll make sense to you when you see it in another 6 months. So, bye for now, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thanks for watching.